So if we actually want to have separate endpoints in the database based on which room we're in, message list is still probably where this is going to have to, let's see, no, it's in chat, right? Yeah, chat is where that stuff is. So chat is where we actually run sync state, and sync state is what determines where in Firebase the stuff is saved. So that's what we want to change. We want to change this right here. So even if it didn't work for you, what did you do next? What's the sensible thing to try next? Yeah.
I went on the Firebase thing or the React like life cycle.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up doing component diff updates when it changes rooms. It does change something.
You probably tried this and it didn't work first though, right?
Tried what?
Did you try changing it here first? And then saw that it didn't work?
Yeah, no, because I have this step props that with that name.
Yeah. So the next thing you'd probably try, right, is just getting this string to change based on that prop, right? So let's go ahead and just try that much. So I'll replace this with a template literal that'll end in slash messages. And then I'll use string interpolation here, $ curly brace, and just put, you said this dot props dot room dot name, right? So room, I have room as an actual object. So this dot props dot room is that whole object. This dot props dot room dot name would be general, random, S2 morning, etc. Right? So I don't have anything in here yet. I start typing. Welcome to the morning class. Look in Firebase. I see S2 morning, and I see a message there, right? So far, so good. But now we need to make it so that we can actually change rooms, right? So to do that, the only main is the component keeping track of what room we're in, right? So main is the only component that is allowed to change that. It's the only one that can change its own state. So we add a method for that. How about load room? Got a better name?
Nope, that works.
Okay. Load room, that'll be a method. We'll need to pass in what room we want to change it to, right? And then there shouldn't really be anything more to that than this dot set state room. Right? So far, not too different from things we've already done. Now we could go ahead and test this in the console now using $R and all that stuff, or we could go ahead and make it work with the links in the sidebar. We can go ahead and make it work with the links in the sidebar before we test it. It's not really gonna slow us down to do that. So these links are in the sidebar, so I know I'm gonna have to pass, since I want to call this method from another component, I'm gonna have to pass it through as a prop, right? At this point, we're old pros at passing functions as props. So sidebar here is now getting quite a few props. User and sign out. And now load room equals this dot load room, right? Because it's a method right here on main. So this dot load room. So open up sidebar. Sidebar is stateless functional, so we're breaking out our components using destructuring, so I will add load room here. And then it's actually inside room list where these links are, right? So let's do that there. Room list, load room equal Load room. So here it is. So for each room we have an LI here with a link in it, right? So what did you do in here? Okay, Bill, were you saying something? So put an on click on those things. So on click is going to call load room with that room in it, right? Now we have rooms that are actual full-blown objects. So we could, at this point, start using map and stuff. Anybody do that? Anybody list the rooms using map? How many people did that? Okay. Do you understand why I want to do that? So eventually we're going to have a... Maggie, what are you doing over here?
I was just proud of myself because I think I did that.
Okay, cool. That's good. So we need a list of rooms somewhere. So maybe we start storing that on state. We could hard code the list of rooms for now instead of getting them from the database, but it seems like probably we're going to have a list of rooms that exist, and we're going to list them, and we're probably going to loop over them here. So we can do that. So room list seems like as good a component as any to store this. I don't think we're going to need the full list of rooms anywhere else. So if we decide later, it depends on how many features we end up building. Maybe at some point we would, but I think for our purposes, this is a perfectly fine place to save this. So I'm going to change it to an actual full-blown class component. So I will import React and component from React. Instead of const room list equals arrow function, class room list extends component. And this return statement is no longer the return statement for the entire thing, but specifically the return statement for the render method. Oops. Okay, we've done it. Now it's a class. Not that big a deal to change. So we'll add some state here. And I'll put an array of rooms. We could do this as an array. I kind of like the idea. What if we did it this way? In Firebase, maybe I have an endpoint called rooms. I don't know. And it's an object, not an array. And the keys are the names of the rooms. So like general. And inside there, I have name, description, and messages, which is my array of messages. So we're already started sort of down that path. We've got like general / messages. We could do like rooms / general / messages. And that would also give us, let us put this here. Otherwise, we'd end up with something like this. So we'd have general messages. This is kind of what we're doing so far. And then we would have a separate endpoint called rooms that would be an array with things like (0) name, general, description, whatever. Which I just don't like that as well. It seems like it's nice to have the messages alongside the name and description and stuff. It just seems like this is a better organization. So if we want to do it that way, I will do rooms as an object instead of as an array. When I ran through the homework last night, I actually did it as an array, but I like this better. But I was just kind of trying to get it done. So we're going to do it the other way. We're going to do it this way. So this is my goal for how this stuff will be stored in the database. So instead of making rooms in an array, I'll make it an object. And I'll make the keys of that object the actual names of the rooms. So again, I'm going to hard code them for now. So like general name, general description, whatever, just chat, folks, like I care. No, okay. S2 morning.
We're not putting the messages in there yet?
No. Not yet. Name. We could put. I don't know. We could put messages in there as an empty array at least. Sure. Why not? So S2 morning. Name is S2 morning. Description. Chat about the coursework. Random. Oh, yeah. We'll put messages. Random. Name. Random. Description. Memes, probably. Messages empty. So if I store the rooms like that, to loop over them, it's this li here that I want to do over and over, right? So probably this part should be a separate component. I'll make a new component for that real quick. I'll call it roomlink.js. It should be pretty basic. Import React from React. Const roomlink equals arrow function. Export default roomlink. It's going to return some JSX. What's it going to return? Something like that. But it's going to need the specific room, so I'm going to pass in the room as a prop. Ahref equals whatever, class name, whatever, and then the actual name of the room goes here. Room.name. Now the style is probably going to have to move into here. So we'll need Aphrodite, because this is the one that has a hover thing on it. We need styles.item and styles.link. I'm just going to copy all the styles out of room list for the moment. And we'll get rid of the ones we don't need. So just copy all those in there. We only need item and link. So there's item and link. It's been warning us about all these links to hash for a long time. I'm just going to change that to slash for right now, for lack of a better thing. That'll at least get it to finally shut up about that warning. So ahref equals slash. Just go to the root URL, whatever. This is not going to be there forever. So now I don't need item and link in this style sheet. So instead of putting these LIs here, I want to loop over this thing. But this thing is not an array anymore, is it? Now it's an object. So what can I do? Remember object.keys? Object.keys, if I call that on this.state.rooms, what will that give me? So what are the keys of this.state.rooms? They are general, S2 morning, and random. So I can map over that. And so what are each of those? Those are each a room name. So for each room name in that array, I want to call, well, we need to import room link, right? Import room link from /room link. Then I want to do that, but I need to actually pass in the room, right? So room equals what? Think about this for a minute. So my array is object.keys, this.state.rooms. So it's an array with just the strings, general, random, etc. But I want to pass in the entire room object to room link. So how do I do that? So what's the list of all rooms? Where's the list of all rooms stored? So this dot, where's it stored? This dot state dot rooms, right? That's the answer I'm looking for. This dot state dot rooms. So to get something out of there, if I know the key, that would be this dot state dot rooms.
So would that just be room name? Because as we're mapping through, we're taking
So room name is a key out of that, right? So what do I type in there?
room name.room or room name.name.
I can't say dot, right? I can't say this dot state dot rooms dot room name, right? Or it will look for an actual key called the string room name. That's not the variable room name, that's the string room name. So square bracket room name. Thank you, Jake. Would get us the entire room out of there. Follow? Make sense? We did this, I think, way back in spell, whatever that thing was called, spellbook. Did I write room link to expect the entire thing? Yeah, room.name. Cool. Okay, now I'm getting this old warning. Look, they're there now. General, S2 morning, random. We did it. It's complaining each child in an array or iterator should have a unique key prop. Remember that? So now that we're looping over something, no big deal. I'll just say key equals room name. Good enough. Make sense? So now we're listing all the rooms. List all the rooms in the sidebar. All the currently hard-coded rooms, but still. So now we want to make it so that if we click on one, it actually changes to that room, right? So sidebar already is getting load room. It's passing load room into room list. Okay, so we have that prop available here. So we're going to have to pass that on to room link, right? So room link is going to need load room, which is this dot props dot load room. So in room link, we have an extra prop now, load room. So we'll just make these links do that when you click them. So on click equals, and what do you suppose the default, is there a default action for clicking a link? There is, right? It goes to the link. We don't want it to do that. We don't want it to browse away from the current page. So we should probably prevent default and all that stuff. So we'll add handle click here. Const handle click equals an arrow function that receives an event. We'll prevent default. And then from there, we'll call load room, whatever room this is. And then our on click here should be handle click. It's not this dot handle click because this isn't a class, right? It's not this dot props dot load room. It's just load room. We destructured it out of the list of props. Does this make sense why this works, or why this is what we're trying next? All right. See what happens. What's happening? This is changing. This is changing. The messages are not. So what does that tell us? State must be changing. That much must have worked. If we want to be sure, check our React Dev Tools, look for main. Here's main state. There's the room. It's S2 morning. Click general, and now it's general. Click random, and now it's random. So it's doing that. Well, heck, if we're actually going to store the messages array, we don't want all those messages there all the time. Yeah. I'm having second thoughts about storing it in the database this way. May have complicated things unnecessarily. Okay. Well, anyway, this isn't working. This isn't doing everything we wanted it to do. So what's the problem? So who knows what the problem is? Who at least got as far as figuring out what basically is wrong? So state is changing. My prop is definitely changing into chat, or we wouldn't see as much change as we do. So let me see the hands again. Has anybody else diagnosed it who didn't manage to fix it? I think she diagnosed it but didn't fix it. Yeah. So Jake, what's the general problem here? Yeah, so sync state isn't changing despite the fact that our prop changed. Why not? Right. So we're running sync state in component will mount. And component will mount runs after render is called the first time. Render is called every time our props and states change. But component in mount only runs the first time. It doesn't run every time we change state. So it's continuing to sync with the same endpoint. So whichever one we were last in. If I actually refresh the page, I get welcome to the morning class, right? I changed to general. The messages don't change. I hit refresh. It still didn't change. Because I'm back to S2 morning. Yeah. So this is just, component will mount is not the right thing anymore. So we'll fix this issue. We do at least have the rooms being listed and linking, right? Add links to rooms in the sidebar. What did I change here? Wait a minute. Yeah, okay. We added the on click, right? Nah, never mind. This isn't worth committing. Nothing new works, really. So the problem is component will mount only runs then. So we got a page in the documentation. Is this the right one? Yeah. So remember the documentation here where we learned about lifecycle functions in the first place? Here we go, the component lifecycle. Each component has several lifecycle methods that you can override to run code at particular times in the process. Here's a lifecycle diagram as a cheat sheet. Heck, that might be nice. Okay, so mounting. The constructor runs first, then render runs, then component did mount runs. Updating. If we get new props or set state or we force an update somehow, render runs, then it runs component did update. And then if the component goes away, it runs component will mount, will unmount, excuse me. So we need component did update to sync state, probably. So we need it to actually start syncing when the props change. Or that's how it appears. So let's see here. Updating. An update can be caused by changes to props or state. They're called in the following order. Get derived state from props. Should component update. Render. Component did update. So component did update. Invoked immediately after updating occurs. It is not called for the initial render, so we're probably going to have to keep the other one there too. We're probably going to have to do both. Component did mount and component did update. So let's add component did update. Now we think they're going to do more or less the same thing. So how about we move this sync state business out to another method of its own. We could call it whatever we want. Sync messages. How's that? I forgot my arrow. So component will mount, we'll call this.sync messages. And component did update, we'll call this.sync messages. So component did update receives 3 arguments: previous props, previous state, and snapshot. So when we're wanting it to rerun sync state is when the props change, right? So we are interested in whether the props changed. So if we receive previous props in our argument list, how about we not bother if the room didn't actually change? We have lots of props that could change. It may be, and state could change for anytime a new message is added, state will change and it'll run component did update. We don't want to change the room and rerun sync state every time that happens, right? So how about we check first? So since it runs after the component changed, it gives us what the props were before so that we can compare it to what the props are now. So I could say if previous props dot room dot name is not equal to this dot props dot room dot name, only then do we want to rerun this dot sync messages. I think this is actually somehow we've gotten this far in the class without ever getting into the whole triple equal thing. So I said not equal equal instead of just not equal. Anybody familiar with this whole thing in JavaScript? When you do comparisons, you generally use 3 equal signs, not 2. That is because, you know why that is?
I think the double one does type conversion.
Right. So if you do a double equal comparison, it will automatically do some typecasting, which can, it's just most of the time not what you actually want. If you want to do some type conversion in your comparison, do it yourself so you at least know what's going on. Don't rely on it to happen automatically because it can be super weird. So most of the time when we do a comparison, we want to use triple equal so that we're actually looking for exactly the same value. And thus, when we do things like not equal, we have an extra equal sign in there. So I'm saying if that's not exactly that string, it's like if I had the string 4 and the number 4, those aren't equal as far as I'm concerned. If I wanted to allow them to be equal, then I would want to call toString myself or something like that and not rely on the automatic type conversion because it just leads to way more errors the other way. A lot more unexpected behavior. So, okay, so if we actually changed rooms is what I'm trying to say here, then run sync messages again. Just out of curiosity, Jake, since you did diagnose this problem, did you get this far? Okay. Madeline, you got this far, right? Running component did update and running sync state again? Not quite. You were real close to that. Oh, well, wait until I actually fix it. We're not done. So who got it to the point where it was updating both rooms? Okay. So that's what you did, right? More or less?
Actually, no. Sam said that there was a problem with like the key getting passed through. Like the key wasn't there, so I added the key and then I was able to update both rooms, and I didn't need that. It was just a hacky solution.
Okay. Let's see what this does. I mean, I didn't actually do it this way last night, so let's see if it... I suspect that's what's going to happen now. Okay, so now I'm in general. Anybody out there? Hey there. Time to chat in general. Let's switch to S2 morning. Doesn't look like it changed, but if I start putting things in there, now where am I chatting? Let's look in the database to see what's actually going on. So I have S2 morning messages. Is anybody out there? Hey there. Time to chat in general. Now where am I chatting? General has messages. Is anybody out there? Hey there. Time to chat in general. Now where am I chatting? If I add another one. What? There's a what in general. Here's a what in S2 morning. So now I'm syncing to both rooms. So yeah, it reran sync messages with the new endpoint, right? What it didn't do is stop syncing with the old one. So for that, we may need to refer to our documentation for rebase. And by the way, when I break it down like this and do it in this order, like truly, this is how I would approach this if I didn't have any idea what I was doing. So the first time I ever used rebase for this kind of thing, this is exactly the kind of steps I followed. This is exactly what I did next. I went to the README for rebase to see there's probably some way to tell it to stop syncing. So I figured this would tell me. So this is exactly how I figured these things out. So I have the rebase README open already, and realistically, if I were using a new NPM package in my project, I would probably keep that tab open for a while. And sync state, this is where I was already scrolled to, because I was looking at what the arguments are. So here's the description of how sync state works, its purpose, its arguments. Here's its return value. The return value is an object, which you can pass to remove binding if you want to remove the listener while the component is still mounted. So that suggests to me that it will stop syncing if that component ever goes away. That's good. But it sounds like we can stop syncing if we want to. So sync state actually returns something that we can pass to remove binding. So this is going to return something. And it's some sort of binding. So in state, I'm going to start storing, I don't know what to call it. How about rebase binding? And it's going to be null to start. So when I call sync messages, I'm going to save the result of sync state to a variable called rebase binding. So const rebase binding equals base.sync state. Okay. You can go look on GitHub too. You don't have to look at a picture. Okay. Not yet. I would argue that whatever it's too a little late now, but whatever you're trying to make work, it's probably more important to follow the class than it is to get it working, so that you understand what's happening in class, because we're explaining a lot of stuff along the way. So I'd say it's probably not worth missing the entire class just to fix an error. All right, so now I'm saving this thing. I want to save it in state. So I'll do this .set state, rebase binding. Why am I doing that? So I can get to it later and tell it to stop listening, right? Object you can pass to remove binding if you want to remove the listener while the component is still mounted. So it sounds like there's something called base.remove binding. And we pass this thing in there. So when I call sync messages, if I'm already listening to something else, I want to stop that. So I will check whether this.state.rebase binding is already a thing. It'll start as null. If it's already a thing, then it sounds like I want to call remove binding. So base.remove binding. Clean up a listener. Listeners are automatically cleaned up when a component's unmount. However, if you wish to remove a listener while the component is still mounted, this will allow you to do that. So an example would be if you want to start listening to a new document or change a query on all collection in response to a prop change. So remove binding, and we'll pass in this.state.rebase binding. So in component mounts, it'll call sync messages. It'll check if this.state.rebinding, that'll be false, so it won't do this. And then it'll sync state. It'll save that to a new binding, update state with that. When the props change, if the room changed, it'll call sync messages again. If this.state.rebase binding will now be true, so it will remove the binding before it calls sync state again. Make sense? I'm going to blow this. I'm going to blow away the S2 morning messages. Okay. Morning time. Let's switch over to general. Anybody out there? Hey there, time to chat in general. Now where am I chatting? What? Switch back to morning. I'm in S2 morning. Switch to random. LOL, so random, YOLO. Woo! LOL. Now it works. We did it! Hooray! Sync each room's messages separately. So the basics here were not too bad. Most of us knew that we needed to save the current room in the state of Maine. The state of Maine. In the state of the main component in the state of Indiana. And then we knew the method that updated that had to live on main, right? So we had to pass it down to the sidebar as a prop. Our links in the sidebar needed to call that method, passing in the new room. And we knew that in chat, we needed sync state to sync with a different endpoint. What we didn't necessarily know was how to get it to actually do that. We got it changing the heading and this announcement easily enough, but the problem is we were syncing our messages in component will mount, and that only runs once. So if we change rooms, that's, yeah, bummer, man. Cool.